Hey everyone, I got so caught up in the reading I didn't realize I was about to get cut off, so let's pick back up with what we were talking about, where I asked for you to consider the description of Daisy. So we're going to start reading here. But here comes Bootsy and Teddy and Big Woman down the street making out. They are pretty by the way they walk. They've got that fresh, new taste about them like young mustard greens in the spring, and the young men on the porch are just bound to tell about it and buy them some treats. Here come my order right now, Charlie Jones announces and scrambles off the porch to meet them. But he has plenty of competition, a pushing, shoving show of gallantry. They all beg the girls to just buy anything they can think of. Please let them pay for it. Joe is begged to wrap up all the candy in the store and order more. All the peanuts and soda water, everything. Gal, I'm crazy about you, Charlie goes on to the entertainment of everybody. I'll do anything in the world except work for you and give you my money. The girls and everybody else help laugh. They know it's not courtship. It's acting out courtship, and everybody is in the play. The three girls hold the center of the stage till Daisy Blount comes walking down the street in the moonlight. Daisy is walking to a drum tune. You can almost hear it by looking at the way she walks. She is black, and she knows that white clothes look good on her, so she wears them for dress-up. She's got those big black eyes with plenty shiny white in them that makes them shine like brand new money. And she knows what God gave women eyelashes for, too. Her hair is not what you might call straight. It's Negro hair, but it's got that kind of... Let's pause right there and talk about Daisy. So the men are acting out courtship. So they're not actually interested in marrying these women, but they're playing a role. And so it actually compares them to kind of being in a play and on a stage and acting out these roles. And then comes Daisy. So Daisy is kind of the queen bee of Bootsy, Teddy, and Big Woman, their group. And her power comes from her good looks. And so we might note some similarities to The Great Gatsby, the most obvious one being that they both have characters named Daisy who are supposed to have their power come from their beauty. And even another similarity that you might see is that it compares her eyes to looking like brand new money. Interestingly, in The Great Gatsby, Daisy's voice is compared to money. And so we have similar symbolism at work here, where women are being treated like a commodity, something that can be earned and owned. And we see that with Janie, where Jody feels as though he owns her. And we see that with Daisy here as well. And this is ultimately what bothers Janie. Janie wants to be more than a pretty face. She wants to be Jody's equal. She wants to make decisions. She wants to have power outside of just her hair, for instance. And so we see that Janie's frustrated with how women are kind of perceived within this community and ultimately within society during this time period. So let's pick back up with a description of Daisy's hair. He wouldn't dig potatoes. Oh, hold on. I was in the middle of something. Yes, okay. Another thing I want to talk about is I want to comment about Daisy's hair. And so Daisy's hair shows the time period Hurston's writing in. So we have this harsh judgment on natural hair, where Janie's hair is considered pretty because it's straight and not curly. And Daisy's hair is considered pretty because while it's curly, it's on the straighter side. And so there's harsh judgment upon the natural hair that women in this community and in African American and Black culture have. And this judgment is still being fought against today. So the judgment that Zora Neale Hurston is showing is a judgment that still exists, for instance, in workplaces today, where some women feel as though that they can't wear their hair naturally because they won't receive as much respect as their coworkers. Now, Hurston is showing this judgment. You can ask yourself, whether Hurston agrees or not with this. Does Hurston, living in the time period, actually believe that straight hair is more beautiful? Or is Hurston showing how women had to deal with having to have straighter hair if they wanted to be considered beautiful? That's up for you to try to figure out in these scenes. What is it that Hurston believes? Is she telling this because she actually believes it? Or is she telling this essentially to show the time period an aspect of it that she disagrees with? So consider that as we continue reading. So let's keep going. Like the piece of string out of a ham. It's not ham at all, but it's been around ham and got the flavor. It was spread down thick and heavy over her shoulders and looked just right under a big white hat. Lord, 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 said that same Charlie Jones exclaims, rushing over to Daisy. It must be a recess in heaven if St. Peter is letting his angels out like this. You got 3 men already laying at the point of death about you, and here's another fool that's willing to make time on your gang. All the rest of the single men have crowded around Daisy by this time. She's parading and blushing at the same time. If you know anybody that's about to die about me, you know more than I do, Daisy bridled. Wish I'd know who it is. Now, Daisy, you know Jim and Dave and Lum is about to kill another about you. Don't stand up here and tell that big old got that wrong. They a mighty hush mouth about it if they is. They ain't never told me nothing. Uh-huh, you talk too fast. Here, Jim and Dave is right upon the porch and Lum is inside the store. A big burst of laughter at Daisy's discomfort. The boys had to act out their rivalry too. Only at this time everybody knew they meant some of it. But all the same, the porch enjoyed the play and helped out whenever extras were needed. David said, Jim don't love Daisy. He don't love you like I do. Jim bellowed indignantly. Who don't love Daisy? I know you're not talking about me. Dave, well, all right, let's prove this thing right now. We'll prove right now who loved this gal the best. How much time is you willing to make for Daisy? Jim? 20 years. So note how here we've gone to where there's a name and a colon. It looks just like how writing might be in a play. And so Hurston's really kind of getting invested in this idea that these characters are acting out a play. They're characters in this play that they reenact day after day with these women. And so she actually uses the structure of her writing to kind of mimic playwrights. To emphasize that theme of people playing these roles. So Dave says, see, I told you that he didn't love you. Me? I'll beg the judge to hang me, and wouldn't take nothing less than life. There was a big long laugh from the porch. Then Jim had to demand a test. Dave, how much would you be willing to do for Daisy if she was to turn fool enough to marry you? Well, me and Daisy done talked that over, but if you got to know, I'd buy Daisy a passenger train and give it to her. Is that all? Well, I'd buy her a steamship, and then I'd hire some men to run it for her. Daisy, don't let Jim fool you with his talk. He don't aim to do nothing for you. A little old steamship, Daisy? I'll take a job cleaning out the Atlantic Ocean for you any time you say so desire. There was a great laugh, and then they hushed to listen. Daisy, Jim began, you know my heart and all the ranges of my mind. And you know, if I was riding up on an aeroplane, way up in the sky, and I looked down and see you walking and knowed you'd have to walk 10 miles to get home, I'd step backward off that aeroplane just to walk with you. There was one of those big blowout laughs, and Janie was wallowing in it. Then Jody ruined it all for her. Mrs. Boogly came walking down the street towards the porch. Mrs. Boogly was many times a grandmother, but had a blushing air of coquetry about her that cloaked her sunken cheeks. You saw a fluttering fan before her face and magnolia blooms and sleepy lakes under the moonlight when she walked. There was no obvious reason for it. It was just so. Her first husband had been a coachman, but studied jury to win her. He had finally become a preacher to hold her till his death. Her second husband worked in Phone's Orange Grove, but tried to preach when he caught her eye. He never got any further than a class leader, but that was something to offer her. It proved his love and pride. She was a wind on the ocean. She moved men, but the helm determined the port. Now this night she mounted the steps, and the men noticed her until she passed inside the door. So the men have gone quiet to be respectful to this woman. And we see that this older woman has been kind of beautiful and sought after through her whole life. And so these young men respect her even though she's older, just because of kind of this beauty she's had throughout her life. So let's pick back up. "My God, Janie," Stark said impatiently, "why don't you go on in and see what Miss Boogly want? What you waiting on?" Janie wanted to hear the rest of the play acting and how it ended, but she got up sullenly and went inside. She came back to the porch with her bristles sticking out all over her and with dissatisfaction written all over her face. Joe saw it and lifted his own hackles a bit. Jim Weston had secretly borrowed a dime, and soon he was loudly beseeching Daisy to have a treat on him. Finally, she consented to taking a pickled pigfoot on him. Janie was getting up a large order when they came in, so Lum waited on them. That is, he went back to the keg, but came back without the pigfoot. "Miss Starks, the pig feed is all gone," he called out. No, they ain't, Lum. I bought a whole new keg of it with the last order from Jacksonville. It come in yesterday." Joan came and helped Lum look, but he couldn't find the new keg either. So he went to the nail over his desk that he used for a file to search for the order. Janie, where's that blasted last bill laden? It's right there on the nail, ain't it? No, it ain't neither. You ain't put it where I told you. If you'd get your mind out of the streets and keep in on your business, maybe you could get something straight sometimes. Ah, look around there, Jody. That bill ain't up to be gone off nowhere. If it ain't hanging on the nail, it's on your desk. You bound to find it if you look. With you here, I don't have to be looking at them and searching. I done told you time and time again. So let's pause right there. So let's talk about the conflict that's brewing between Janie and Jody. So with the play on the porch, we, the readers, for a little while forget about Janie and Jody. We forget about the problems that they have in their marriage, and we get caught up in all the silliness of the porch talk and the porch playing. But Hurston subtly inserts their conflict back into the scene by having them kind of move into the store looking for the pig's feet. And we see that essentially whenever Janie and Jody interact, they're fighting and arguing and having these little spats. And so Jody tells Janie to go back into the store to work, even though Janie's enjoying the stories. And when Jody can't find a receipt, he blames Janie for not paying enough attention. And so it's the idea that Janie doesn't enjoy working in the store. She doesn't seem very good at it, but Jody expects her to do these things because he feels as though she owes it to him because he's given her so much. And that's where the tension lies. All you gotta do is mind me. How come you can't do like I tells you? Jody asked. You sure love to tell me what to do, but I can't tell nothing I see. That's 'cause you need tellin', he rejoined hotly. It would be pitiful if I didn't. Somebody gotta think for the women and the chillins and the chickens and cows. Ah, look at that use of polysyndeton with the and and the and and the and. That emphasizes how Jody feels as though he's responsible for so many things, and he's exasperated or frustrated that Janie won't help him. I God, they sure don't think none themselves. I knows a few things, and women folks thinks sometimes too. Ah, no they don't. They just think they thinkin'. When I see one thing, I understand 10. You see 10 things, and you don't understand one. Times and scenes like that put Janie to thinking about the inside state of her marriage. Time came when she fought back with her tongue as best she could, but it didn't do her any good. It just made Joe do more. He wanted her submission, and he kept on fighting until he felt he had it. So gradually she pressed her teeth together and learned to hush. The spirit of the marriage left the bedroom and took to living in the parlor. If it was there to shake hands whenever company came to visit, but it never went back inside the bedroom again. So she put something in there to represent it, like the spirit like a Virgin Mary image in a church. The bed was no longer a daisy field for her and Joe to play in. It was a place where she went and laid down when she was sleepy and tired. She wasn't petal open anymore with him. She was 24 and 7 years married when she knew. She found that out one day when he slapped her in the face in the kitchen. It happened over one of those dinners that chasten all women sometimes. So let's pause right there. So let's continue talking about what conflict is brewing between Janie and Jody. So Jody wants Janie to be submissive, but Janie has learned to fight back her tongue and not argue too much with him. So when Jody kind of picks a fight with her, she tries not to argue back because she feels as though it'll make it worse. And essentially this constant frustration with one another. So this constant frustration with one another has made their marriage loveless, where they just, again, play the roles of husband and wife. And so we see this role playing continue throughout the chapter, where people are playing the roles that they've created for themselves, and possibly that others have created for them. And so what was the breaking point in their marriage? It mentions it right at the end where we were reading it, where Jody actually slaps Janie in the face. And that's when, after 7 years of marriage, when she's 24 years old, she realizes that she doesn't actually love Jody like she thought she did. So let's talk more about this breaking point in their marriage. So let's pick back up here. Janie was a good cook, and Joe had looked forward to his dinner as a refuge from other things. So when the bread didn't rise, and the fish wasn't quite done at the bone, and the rice was scorched, he slapped Janie until she had a ringing sound in her ears, and told her about her brains before he stalked on back to the store. Janie stood where he left her for unmeasured time, and thought. She stood there until something fell off the shelf inside her. Then she went inside to see what it was. It was her image of Jody, tumbled down and shattered. But looking at it, she saw that it never was the flesh and blood figure of her dreams. just something she had grabbed up to drape her dreams over. In a way, she turned her